Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Twameva Mata cha Pita, Twameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Twameva Vedya Dravinam, Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Saviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So last week we covered the verse where Krishna says, I am the author of the Chatur Varna, the fourfold caste, according to guna and karma, qualities of mind and our actions. And this is a universal principle. It is not about the caste system in India, although that's what it's come to mean. It means the society in general tends to organize itself into these four categories. Those who are the intellectuals, the scholars, the who hold the religious traditions. Then there are those who are the fighters, the warriors, the lawyers, who seek to establish and maintain justice. Then there are those who deal with the production and distribution of goods and services. And then there are those who are working class, who work with their hands, who provide the labor for the society. And not one class, one caste is better than another. Is the thumb better than the elbow? Is the nose better than the toe? No, they're different. They do different functions, but all are necessary to a properly functioning body. So also, all these four dimensions of a society are essential for it to work properly. And how do you know what you're supposed to be doing? You check out your own heart's deepest desires, what we call swadharma. We covered that more completely in the last chapter. And you can't live someone else's swadharma, they're taken. You can only be you. And so the invocation here is to strive for authenticity. Striving for authenticity. And then Krishna went on to say, but I, and here he's talking about the self in all of us, is never touched by it. We have actionlessness in the midst of action. The self never moves. The self has no agency. All of that is in the upadhis, in the equipment. All right, so I think we start with the 15th verse. Can you help us out, please, Deepa?
Sure. एवं ज्ञात्वा कृतं कर्म पूर्वैरपि मुमुक्षुभिः कुरु कर्मैव तस्मात् त्वं पूर्वतरं कृतम्. Having known this, the ancient seekers after freedom also performed action. Therefore, you too perform action, as did the ancients in the olden times.
So here Gita is striking at one of these largest misconceptions. I was talking with a person recently, and he's doing well. He's beginning to get rooted to a large degree in this experience that he is that witnessing consciousness. And then all these ideas started to come to him that, well, maybe someday he should be a teacher. Now, that may be his karma. But many people think that what they're supposed to do and be is a holy person. For God's sake, don't try to be a holy person. It's incredibly burdensome, and you will fall short. God alone is good. All the rest of us, at the level of the equipment, strive for it. So, what happens? We have this wide range of behavior in our tradition for men and women of wisdom. We have the very austere and very pure. A great example is the young Brahmin boy Nachiketas in Kathopanishad. So pure, such a renunciate, sits outside Lord Yama's place for 3 days. On the whole other extreme, we have King Janaka, who was a king after his realization. He stayed a king. He fought his wars. He took care of his many, many, many wives. He did all the things that kings would do. Was a wealthy man who was a king. One of my favorite characters in all of the literature, because I can identify with her a lot, is a sage named Karkati. Karkati is a big, fat demoness. She's a Rakshasi. And her mode of living is to eat human flesh. And she just can't ever get enough. So she does tapas, and she transforms herself into Suchi, which means a needle. And she becomes the disease cholera. So that way she can consume millions and millions of people for thousands of years. But even that doesn't satisfy her. So she does more tapas and inquires into the nature of the self, and she becomes realized. When she comes out of samadhi, her hunger returns. And she doesn't want dal and rice. She wants human flesh. So she's there in the forest and she says, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm only going to eat stupid, foolish people. If a sage comes by, I won't eat him. So this king and his minister come through the forest and she roars at them and puts these questions which are really about the nature of the self to them. They are men of wisdom. They answer them in a trice. And she says, okay, I won't eat you, but I'll grant you a boon. And the king says, don't eat people anymore. And she says, all right, I'm absolutely detached because I'm a woman of wisdom. I'll just wither away and die because that's the only thing I can eat. He says, well, we can't have that. So he says, tell you what, you come up to my kingdom in the Himalayas. And you transform yourself into a beautiful woman and you hang out at court all year long. And my job is to catch criminals and make sure they don't cause trouble. So once a year, you transform yourself back into your demonic form and eat all the criminals. Rest for a while, then come back as the beautiful damsel. So that's how the story ends. But the point of the story is that Karkati's realization did not make her change her swadharma. There's the old Zen proverb, before enlightenment I chopped wood and carried water. After enlightenment I chopped wood and carried water. Our actions in the world will be changed to some degree by enlightenment. Just like Karkati says, I don't want to eat good people. I'll just stick with the stupid ones. So even though we don't leave our swadharma, it is perfumed by knowledge. Let your proud of the karma of the body itself, the path your life is on, let it take care of itself. Do not think that taking on the trappings of what you think is holiness is going to change things. Don't try to be a different kind of person. Be Brahman. Be identified with the self, who's the witness of it all. Any thoughts or questions about this? Next verse.
Kim karma kim karmeti kavayopyatra mohita tate karma pravakshami yajkyatva mokshasye shubhat. What is action? What is inaction? As to this, even the wise are deluded. Therefore, I shall teach you action, the nature of action and inaction, knowing which you shall be liberated from the evil of samsara, the wheel of birth and death.
Yes. So now Krishna is putting forward this conundrum that many of us deal with. So, what should I do in the world? How active should I be in the world? I want self-realization. Does that mean I should quit my job and move to the mountains? If my actions produce karma and that's going to keep the whole wheel of samsara going, should I try to do as little as possible? There are many yogis who get very confused about this. So Krishna is going to now begin a whole section on action and inaction, or action and actionlessness. Let's see what the Lord has to say. Going on.
कर्मणो ह्यपि बोद्धव्यम् बोद्धव्यं च विकर्मणः अकर्मणश्च बोद्धव्यं गहना कर्मणो गतिः. For verily the true nature of right action should be known, also that of forbidden or unlawful action, and of inaction. Imponderable is the nature of action.
So, what we need to know, especially in the beginning, are what we call the yamas and the niyamas, the do's and don'ts of life. How should we act in the world? And what kinds of things should we refrain from? Here, Gita is giving us good moral teaching. Don't cheat. Don't steal. Don't lie. Aspire to rigorous honesty. Be kind. Be generous. Take up a spiritual practice. Live a sattvic life. Be moderate in everything. We get so many guides in the literature of how to do this sort of thing. Why? Because from there, we quickly start writing the foundering ship of our life. Understanding that every action we do produces a reaction, starts to make how to behave ethically pretty simple. If you steal, you're going to get stolen from. If you cheat here, you're going to be cheated there. If you lie to someone, you will be lied to. If you gossip, don't complain if you are the subject of other people's gossip. We have the golden rule in Christianity: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The Chinese put it in a negative way: don't do to other people what you wouldn't want them to do to you. But the Hindus say, it will be done unto you as you do to others. So this becomes the easiest way to understand what's right action and what's not. It allows us also to pare away what is simply cultural ritual, which you may or may not wish to engage in. That's up to you. That's up to you. And if you have specifics about these sorts of things, we can talk about it. So, for example, for Christians right now, we've entered the season of Lent. It's a penitential season. If you choose and you're Christian, you can give up something to which you're attached, or you can take on a habit changing behavior, a kind of tapas. But we can always do things to do good in the world. What's the value? These yamas and niyamas help to purify the head and the heart. For example, if you lie all the time, then you got to try to remember who you lied what to. If you just tell the truth, there's no problem. If when you hurt or harm another person, most of the time inadvertently. If you immediately clean it up, then you don't have to avoid people. It becomes very simple. Any thoughts on this? So he's going to teach us about right action and wrong action. Then he's going to talk to us about inaction and action. What's the relationship? Let's see what he says. Going on, please.
Karmanya karma yaha pashe the karmani cha karma yaha sa buddhimana manusheshu sayuktaha kritsna karma krit. He who recognizes inaction in action and action in inaction is wise among men. He is a yogi and a true performer of all actions.
So here, Krishna, in this verse filled with paradoxical language, is talking to us about the truth. The equipment, the body, mind, intellect, does all of the action. The self is actionless. So going to work and doing your various projects and meetings and stuff like that is an action. But you are the uninvolved witness, whoever knows it. And if you're sitting at home or on a meditation retreat and you are absolutely still in meditation for hours on end, that is an action. So we do not aspire to physical actionlessness. It is the equipment, the bodies that always act. It is the self that never acts. Let me back up. There was one more point on the previous verse I wanted to make, and I forgot. One of the things we want to make sure we're aware of. In the Christian church, you can go to church every Sunday and be very devout. But if you scream and yell at your neighbor in the parking lot, you've missed the point. Likewise, for Hindus, you can do puja on a regular basis. Chant Lalita Sahasranam every morning. But if during the day you're filled with jealousy and envy, and you're dwelling in self-pity and regret for the past, you've missed the point. Those are just the externals of religious life. We have to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Okay, so back to actionlessness and action. So sitting still is an action. Walking around is an action. Okay, I'm not going to act. I'm just going to sit here. I promise you, you'll breathe. You'll eventually have to go to the bathroom. You'll eventually want to go get something to eat. You cannot escape action. And action in and of itself is not problematic. Now, there are those people who think the spiritual life is all about good karma. That's what I'm supposed to do. Oh, I'm being punished for bad karma. Got to do ritual and stuff to expiate it. Or what it's about is being a goody-goody in the world. By all means, please try to be a good person for no other reason out of compassion for the rest of us. But that is not what bestows freedom. Freedom comes from this shift in our identity away from the body, mind, intellect to the self itself, which is already pure, which is never touched by the actions of the body. Now, don't believe me as you're functioning through the day. When you remember, just check it out. Have this radical reversal of your attention. Notice the noticer. Yep, I'm still just witnessing consciousness, hasn't changed. Move your hand. Nope, I'm still just witnessing consciousness. Think a virtuous thought. May all beings be happy. Didn't change myself. Think a vicious thought. I hate so and so and such and such. Doesn't change myself. The self is outside of all of those behaviors. And freedom comes from getting out. Any thoughts on this? Jim, does that mean the yogi has a license to do anything? Well, you're going to do what you're going to do, impelled by the force of your past. But at the level of the body, you're still going to reap the karmic effects. If you scream and yell at your boss and punch him in the face, don't complain if you get fired. And neither action touches yourself. But just because you know that you are not the person acting, I'm going to keep you from getting fired. Any thoughts? The dharma of the body is karma. What do bodies do? What is their essential nature? They act. They work. The dharma of yourself is moksha. I am ever free, but never touched. Next verse.
Can I ask a question, Jim?
Please.
You know, the whole idea of you're going to do what you're going to do, and what you do will come back to you. It's when the action is obviously negative, like lying, stealing, coveting something else, and jealousy, all of that, that's fine. And then if there's awareness around that, you can even work towards reversing that. What about inadvertent negative actions?
That's a very good point. And the classic example is the soldier. What's the difference between the drug addict who murders somebody and steals their money and the soldier who fights for his or her country? Both engage in murder and killing. But the stain on the psyche for someone who maybe gets high on crack and kills somebody is different than the impression for the soldier. I'm not saying there's not something there, but it is different. So our motivations and intentions color the quality of the reactions of our actions. Now, one of the ways in which you can keep your side of the street clean, most of us I mean, you're evolved to some degree, you wouldn't be at a Gita class. Probably don't too often intentionally hurt or harm people. I mean, if you have an unfortunate love affair, you may purposely, out of pain, say something that's really cruel and hurtful. Or in a divorce, someone may be so upset they want to just get back at the other person. It's important for us to acknowledge that's vengeful behavior. But most of the time, we do things that hurt people, not to hurt them. You said you were going to meet so and so for tea, and you didn't put it in your calendar and you forgot. I was talking with a friend who was out with a group of people he socializes with a lot, and he was talking about the wedding that they were all going to go to the following weekend. And all of a sudden, he realized that one of the people wasn't invited. He just felt terrible. So we do things that hurt people. So whether we do things that hurt people or our lower self is in bloom and we do things to hurt people, you can't change the past, but you can clean it up by acknowledging your behavior and amending it. Now, what's the difference between an amend and an apology? To amend something is to change it, to make it right. An apology means I'm sorry. And we have a lot of people in life who, I always like to say, who are sorry alcoholics, for example. Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. We may have friends, for example, who are always apologizing, but their behavior never changes. So to amend is to change the behavior. So, for example, let's say you gossip about another and it gets back to them. Your intention was not to hurt anybody, but it gets back to them and they are hurt. But what do? You have to be humble. And you go to them and say, what I did was wrong. I apologize. And I'm going to work on not ever doing it again. So one of the ways that we have a hard time living in the present is regret for our bad behavior of the past. I'm a firm believer in the value of cleaning up the past the best that we can. Sometimes we can't. The person has passed away, or they moved on, we don't know where they are. But there's a whole lot of cleaning up we can do. You always stay on your side of the street. Yeah, but they acted like a really bad jerk. They provoked me. You leaving aside their behavior altogether, you stay with your own behavior. Acknowledge it, apologize, do your best to make it right. Sometimes there's nothing we can do. I'm thinking of a very dear friend of mine that I know from AA. And she's now 37 years sober. But she was a drunken mom. And she got sober when her kids were teenagers. And one of her children, her son, still hasn't forgiven her. And she's done everything she can to apologize, to acknowledge her bad behavior. She's a different person. But he won't let go of it. And she can't go groveling to it. She's got to accept the fact that he won't forgive her. Those kinds of things can be very hard. But that's a useful tool that I have found. If we clean up the past, it's much easier to stay in the present. present. If you have a fight with a person, check out your own behavior. What was my part in it? Be quick to acknowledge it. Make peace. Now, the other person can make peace or not. We have no power over them. But you'll feel at peace with yourself. Was that useful, Deepa?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
To sum it up, rarely, for most of us, are we doing things to hurt people. We may have in the past if we've been badly hurt ourselves. But we do things that hurt people simply out of being inattentive and unconscious. All right, next verse.
Yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjita jnanagni dagdha karmanam tamahu panditam buddha, whose undertakings are all devoid of desires and purposes, and whose actions have been burnt by the fire of knowledge, him the wise call a sage.
So, for the woman or the man of wisdom, their actions are perfumed in a different way. When we've given up this vancha, this wanting, when the loud screaming voices of I must have it this way and I'll never have it that way, when we've got some of this samadrishta, this equality of vision, then the intuition comes through us. And we get the sense you're walking down the street, oh, turn left. Most of us have had instances of this. Have you ever had the feeling where you're just doing the dishes or straightening up the house, and all of a sudden a friend comes to mind and you get the sense to call them? Oh, I'm so glad you called. I'm just having such a terrible day. Have you ever had things like that? Or the phone rings and you know who it is before you even look at the phone. Many of us have those things. So if we give up our investment in the outcome, then the hand of God can use us. The Master Jesus phrased it this way. He would say, I of myself do nothing. It is the Father within that doeth the work. And then when questioned about the miracles he would perform, he would say, my Father always hears me because I do his will. When Aditi did the cups, the mugs with the aphorisms on them, some of them, at least the one she gave me, says, good morning, God, this is Jim reporting for duty. I love that idea. How will you use me today? How can I be of service to you and to my fellow human beings? Let me spend myself in love today. Not my will, but thy will be done. All these are ideas wherein for the yogi practices it, but for the woman or the man of wisdom, they're out of control. There's no business plan for life anymore. No idea what's going to happen moment to moment. And you don't care. Do you make plans? Of course you make plans. But if it goes haywire, no big deal. No big deal. Why? Because my happiness is no longer invested in the outcome of events. I have this equanimity of mind, this equality of vision. Any thoughts on this?
Hey, Jim, this is Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Hey, good evening. Can you share a little bit on this? When a body has been trained through conditioning
So when a body has been trained,
trained through conditioning, through environmental conditioning to respond to trauma with a heightened physiological arousal. And so then one responds later in life with illogical bodily reactions. Then can you speak to how a spiritual practice, a strong, intentional spiritual practice can help soothe?
Yes, it's an excellent question. Yoga takes a different paradigm than Western psychology. In Western psychology, we tend to have a body-mind split. In yoga, the body and the mind are just a subtle and gross form of the same thing. So the premise of the question would not be the same for yoga, where you have just a body response to trauma. It's never just a body response to trauma. The mind is in there too. Through memory, gets triggered. So what does the yogi do? Now, in the beginning, you may have to do EMDR. You may have to go through ways in which to deal with the grosser aspects of trauma. But after a while, what a yogi can do is you're in the similar situation. Let's say, for example, you had an abusive father that would beat you. So whenever men yell at you, you get this fight and flight mechanism happening. When it happens, what you want to do is live in the higher intellect, and you see that reaction come up. And yes, it's a trauma response. You're not reacting to the boss, you're reacting to your father. That's the way trauma works. But for the yogi, you want to be able to see what it is. And just don't do something, stand there. Let the subtle body, the mind and the intellect shake, rattle, and roll. Do your best to not get engaged with it. You watch it, you watch it, you watch it. And if some mental health professional says, you're going to react, it's in the body, there's nothing you can do about it, yoga would say that's only a partial truth. Only a partial truth. And at some point, what I would recommend is in your meditation, you might even want to start by writing. Write down. Remember as many of the traumatic events as you can. When the feelings come up, you just let them come up. Just don't do something. Sit there with them. You don't have to try to rationalize, justify, or anything like that. Just be present to it. Now, Katie, I'm going to give you one of the rules of the mind. Any psychic event, psychological event, mental event that is resisted or denied tends to persist. That's the problem with trauma. Any psychic event, a mental or emotional event, that is fully experienced tends to dissipate or dissolve. That's the whole theory behind psychotherapy. Once you understand that your mind's saying, I don't want to feel that, I want to go there, I don't want to do that, that's counterproductive. It only causes the traumatic event in your mind, which is where it really is. It shows up in the body, but it causes it to persist. So you've got to face your demons, and there's no shortcut. There's absolutely no shortcut. Going off on a retreat and doing Kundalini yoga or something just to get high won't do it. Taking ayahuasca or microdosing LSD won't do it. You have to do the manual work of being present to the unresolved events that are in the unconscious. Let me give you another metaphor. Have you ever done any intense body work, like deep tissue body work, like rolfing or anything like that?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so if the body worker is, say, working on your thigh and everything is clear, oh God, that feels so good. But then they're right behind your knee and they hit a knot and you go, ah! Is the body worker hurting you?
No.
Where's the pain?
Your inner physical.
It's already there.
Right.
It's stored trauma is what it is.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they work on that thing. You go, oh. Finally, they loosen the knot. And I've been rolfed. I know what it's like, You get the trauma release. Meditation is rolfing your mind. That's what we do. It's not superimposing some salve on top of your ulcerated trauma. It's exactly the opposite. It's like lancing of an infected boil and all the pus comes out. So it takes great courage to really be a meditator. Is this helpful?
Yes, thank you.
You hear a word, I try not to use it because I don't like it, but I'm going to tonight anyway. You hear many people talk about spiritual bypass. And that's how people just try to get high spiritually. And they are unwilling to go through the nitty-gritty work of facing all that inner material. Now, what you don't want to do is get caught up in story. So there you are in meditation and an event. Let's use the example we used. You had an abusive father. And then all of a sudden, oh God, he was so awful. And I was just a victim, my poor inner child. Oh, it would have been so much better if it had been different. Oh, like my older brother, he didn't have to go through what I did. You get caught up in story. Do you understand the difference? That's completely counterproductive. It's actually a way in which the mind tries to protect itself. You want to stay with the feelings. That's where you want to go. And what do? You just shake, rattle, and roll. Stay present to them. Stay present to them. When we study Yoga Vasishta, not Yoga Vasishta, Viveka Chudamani, excuse me. One of the qualities that a good yogi is supposed to have is viryam. And too frequently it's translated as manliness or something like that. It really doesn't mean that. It means the warrior spirit. It means the warrior spirit, because this takes great courage to look at it all. Now, being able to stand back and take on the viewpoint of the witness actually allows that stuff to come up much more easily. When you get at a deep level, it's not me. That's something that just happened to the body, mind, intellect. It never really touched me. Very good question. Very good question. Anything else? A follow-up?
No, thank you, Jim. It's super helpful.
All right, next verse.
Hey, Jim, sorry, could I ask a follow-up question on this? This is Fang.
Sure. Is that Fang?
Yes, hey, Jim, how's it going?
I'm well. What's your question, dear?
I have a question on what you said, which is, don't get caught up in the story, just feel it. But sometimes don't you need to understand why you're feeling a certain way? Like what's going on? Doesn't that also sometimes bubble up as well? Like it's a realization that, oh, like I'm being triggered because of X, Y, and Z that might have happened in the past?
Well, the insight will come. So, for example, let's go back to that story. Let's say you find that you've always had trouble with male bosses who manage by intimidation. And if, for example, you had an abusive father, then you begin to see, oh yeah, I'm not pissed or frightened of the boss. I'm frightened of my father. So yeah, there's some of that. But going causation hunting is usually futile. And what happens is the ego thinks, if I figure it out, if I know why I'm so unhappy, that somehow that'll make it go away. And I cannot tell you how many people I have known who've gone through years of psychotherapy and they know why they're a miserable basket case, and they're still a miserable basket case. Understanding then is the booby prize. It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't fix anything. But your intuition will guide you. Trust your own interior process. If you just make the time, take the time to meditate, to make space, to do nothing, so all the suppressive energy that we use to push down the unconscious is taken away. Then out of the unconscious comes these, and we have a name for them in Sanskrit. It's called the Hridaya Granthi, the knots of the heart. Isn't that a beautiful way to name them? They come out of the unconscious into your field of awareness, and you just hold them in the light, compassionate awareness, and then they start to dissipate. Remember my rule of the mind. Any mental, psychic event that is resisted or denied will tend to persist. Any psychic event that's fully experienced will tend to dissipate. Guys, for example, are oftentimes unwilling to admit that they're frightened. or sad. They'll cover it up with anger. That's not what they're really feeling. Anger is the secondary emotion. So, if you get them to be still enough, what are you angry about? What's going on? Tell me what you're feeling. Frequently, I'll say, where's it located in your body? Oh, my God. So, oh, it's in my throat. Your body never lies. Your body never lies. And then you find out what's really going on. And sometimes it's very ancient pain. Some of this pain may be from your pre-verbal world. And there can't be a story because your mind wasn't developed enough to have a story. All you knew was you were frightened, or there was no mommy, or something like that. Is that useful, Fang?
Yeah, that's super useful. Thanks, Jim.
All right, next verse.
त्यक्त्वा कर्मफलासङ्गं नित्यतृप्तो निराश्रय कर्मण्यभिप्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किञ्चित् करोति सः. Having abandoned attachment to the fruits of action, ever content, depending on nothing, he does not do anything, though engaged in actions.
Yes. So we have this term in Sanskrit, very important, karma phalam. In Hindi, we say phalam. In Sanskrit, we say phalam. It's the same word, the fruit of the action. So as a yogi, we want to give up our attachment to the outcome of events. Work, but the fruits belong to God. So having let go of my concern for the outcome. That doesn't mean be sloppy in your work. If you've been given an assignment, you have to complete this task. It's your duty, complete the task. But if it blows up, you don't get upset. Stay cool. Shitala manasaha. Shitala means a cool mind. Shitala manasaha. And that way, when you understand it is the body and the mind and the intellect interacting with other body, minds, intellects. Sometimes there's consonance, sometimes there's dissonance. You stay as the uninvolved, unattached witness of it all. Now, actually, you'll find this will make you much more effective as you work in the world. I'm thinking of my friend Ron, who works for the FAA, and now they keep moving him up into higher management positions. But he's a pretty good yogi. And one of the things that has been helpful is when there's apparent crisis going on because of his yoga. He's pretty cool. No drama. He just stays on point, gets stuff done. And I'm sure we've all worked with people where everything's a crisis and everything, you get upset about, everything becomes personalized. Our job is just let it all go, let it pass through, and stay on task. Another slogan I like: what other people think about me is none of my business. Now, if I'm not producing properly at work, then that criticism is valid and it's good for correction. But if it's ab hominem attack, you're stupid, you're not bad, you're bad, how could you have done this, you're a failure, stuff like that, it's all projection. That's their own minds. What other people think of me is none of my business. And what I think of other people is none of their business. Develop the habit of not gossiping, not criticizing, encouraging people. No doubt. And see if that doesn't improve your productivity in the workplace. One of the things Swamiji always used to say about Gita, he said, it's for the man of knowledge downtown. This will make you a far more effective person. Of course, I would say for the woman of knowledge downtown as well. These are practical things in our workaday world. All right, what verse are we on, Deepa?
We just finished 20.
Okay, so we'll do 21 next week. We'll stop here. We have time for questions. Any other questions?
I have a question, Jim.
Who's that?
Deepa.
Oh, okay.
When we listen to how to control our actions, actually, let me phrase this another way. What do we do about desires that we've intellectually say, I've been coming to Vedanta class and I want ice cream, but I'm pre-diabetic, I shouldn't eat ice cream. And I keep thinking about it, but I don't do it. And I'm never going to do it because I'm grown up. But the thought keeps recurring, or any desire like that, where you don't want to resolve it, intellectually you've sorted it out, but it keeps recurring in the subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
And what sort of actions or advice would you give to such, these?
Very good question. Very good question. We may not have control over the first thought that arises. But if you keep thinking about the ice cream, you're probably going to act on it. Shankara has a wonderful example. It's about a child playing with a rubber ball at a South Indian temple with all the stairs. And it falls on the first stair. If you can grab it right then, you got the ball. But if it goes to the second one and then all the way to the bottom. So the discipline is, when the thought of ice cream comes up, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Now, most of these thoughts will thin, they'll lessen if you don't feed them. What you don't want to do is take the time fantasizing about how good the ice cream would taste, but oh no, I can't have any because I'm pre-diabetic. Then don't go down the stairway. Right away, turn your mind to something that's productive. Now, some of these never go away. I think I heard somebody on the television once say that men think about sex something like every 40 seconds, and it never goes away. and may not act on it, but they don't stop having the thought arise. Now, it certainly lessens if you're not in a relationship. But some of them never go away. But just because you have a thought or a feeling or a desire, if you don't do anything, it does go away. The energy, if you don't feed it, you'll start thinking about something else. But anytime we do habit correction, if you ate ice cream for many years and really enjoyed it, it'll take some time for that thought to go away. But just because it arises doesn't mean you have to act on it. That's the key. Turn the mind to something else. The slogan I like to use is, we are not healed by what we turn from, but by what we turn to. You may have heard me talk about, now don't think about the elephant. Don't think about its long trunk, and don't think about its massive tusks, and certainly don't think about its big ears, and don't think about its tree trunk-like legs, etc. See, you're not successful in not thinking about an elephant. But while we had you thinking about an elephant, were you thinking about a giraffe? No. So turn your mind to something you want to think about. These are the yogi's bag of tricks. The yogi needs to carry around a little carpet bag with all these spiritual practices in it. You take one out and use it. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you, Jim.
Any other thoughts or questions? We got a couple more minutes. So the assignment this week, all action takes place by the equipment. I am not the actor. I am ever the witness of it. Put the robot on automatic pilot. Let it do its duty in the world. And you stay out of it. You ever identify as that witnessing consciousness. It's never touched, never succeeds, and never fails. All right, let's sit. Samadha purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadhaya purnameva vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari